On November 25th, 2022, Prime Minister John Briceño and President Nicolas Maduro held talks at Miraflores Palace, the president's official residence in Caracas, Venezuela. The leaders signed a joint declaration of the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the Prime Minister of Belize, in which they committed to strengthening the close bonds of friendship and solidarity between their countries and respective peoples. They committed to work together to conclude agreements for cooperation in trade, energy, tourism, communications, air connectivity, education, culture, and housing. It was agreed that a mixed commission would soon begin work to advance this broad bilateral agenda. President Maduro announced that Petrocaribe was being renewed and expanded to cover products in addition to petroleum, and that Belize would continue to be one of the beneficiaries. And when it comes to the over $450 million in Petrocaribe funds already owed to Venezuela, which was obtained by the previous UDP administration, a new agreement was reached that brings substantial benefits to both countries. Today, as he arrived at the PGIA, PM Briceño elaborated on the discussion held with President Maduro.
We're looking at many aspects of what we're looking at, of what's happening in Belize. Certainly we're looking at the issue of how signing agreements based on education, on environment, on agriculture, on culture, all of these issues, and including that they are looking at trying to reconcile what happened with Petrocaribe, but more in particular, see how we can revive Petrocaribe, the Petrocaribe program, to be able to see if we can, in the near future, once the United States is to ease up the restrictions or the sanctions against Venezuela, that they would allow us to be able to import subsidized fuel from Venezuela.
There's nothing concrete that you can report on after this trip? You mean there's still a lot of work to do?
Well, of course, the work is never finished. And as it is, yes, one of the things that we've been looking at, we're trying to restructure the entire debt of Belize, trying to see how we can reduce the debt to GDP. We have done successfully the super bond, and now we have the blue bond. We are looking at how, by growing the economy, that we can continue to reduce debt to GDP. And of course, Venezuela is another one, but more work is left to be done.
As both countries work on renegotiating the millions in Petrocaribe funds already owed by Belize, Ambassador Mark Espat will lead that charge.
Ambassador Mark Espat has been working on this for a very, very long time. We have gotten him to be able to look at it and to see how we can address it, because it requires many things when that time comes, as that if we can settle on a definitive figure of what would be outstanding, because then we have to see how is it that we can pay. And we have to make sure that we follow the laws and to respect the sanctions that the United States government has imposed. And we're hoping that the United States government would either sooner or later be able to ease the restrictions so that countries can be able to meet their legal obligations to a sovereign country like Venezuela.
As for the renewal of the Petrocaribe program, that could lead to a reduction in fuel prices.
I think it would be in the interest of Belize if we can be able to reduce the cost of fuel. The last shipment for diesel fuel, the tax on that, the price went up. I think it's about $1.40, I think, or close to $1.50 per gallon. And what we decided to absorb that by reducing the taxes, because the price is already way too high. So we could not afford it. So as we reduce the tax, we continue to lose millions of dollars in taxes, monies that are desperately needed, especially after a hurricane. So I don't think anybody in their right mind can criticize the government of Belize for trying to find a way how we can revive the Petrocaribe Accords, probably on a different conditions or a different set of agreements.
Prime Minister Briceño also welcomed the offer by Venezuela to provide support to Belize in housing and fertilizer for Belizean farmers after the destruction caused by Hurricane Lisa.
We spoke about Hurricane Lisa and how it affected Belize, in particular Belize City, and that it affected the housing, especially of the poor, of the vulnerable. They have a program where they build low-cost housing, and so they're prepared to make that available to Belize so that we can quickly build some homes for the most needed, the ones that were affected during the hurricane. But we were also talking about agriculture and the very high cost of fertilizers, and they produce fertilizers. So again, we want to see how we can work a program where they can assist us at reduced prices of fertilizers for our farmers.
With Belize being a long-standing ally of Venezuela, Prime Minister John Briceño does not believe that his latest meeting with Maduro will have any repercussions with the U.S.
When we met with Secretary of State Blinken, we mentioned about the possibility of Venezuela on strengthened relationship, talking about the possibility of the United States one day trying to ease up the restrictions, especially for the region, for us in the Caribbean, the Petro-Caribbean program that has played a critical role in the entire region. And we discussed all of these issues with the Secretary of State. And if you were to follow the news, I think it was on Friday, it was announced that I think Chevron was given the green light to be able to start oil exploration, an American company to have start oil exploration and extraction in Venezuela.
During the discussions, both leaders also acknowledged the need to work together to strengthen regional cooperation through CARICOM and CELAC and reiterated their call to maintain the Caribbean as a zone of peace. In the joint statement, Belize and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela reaffirmed their respect for the Charter of the United Nations, international law, and the Bandung principles which guide the non-aligned movement. President Maduro accepted the invitation of Prime Minister Briceño to Belize at a convenient time in 2023. Prime Minister Briceño was joined in Venezuela by Honorable Eamon Courtney, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade and Immigration, Ambassador Mark Espat, Financial Advisor, His Excellency Ambassador Oscar Arnold, and Mr. Kareem Michael, Governor of the Central Bank of Belize. President Maduro was joined by Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, Foreign Minister Carlos Faria, Mr. Brander Peña, Vice President for Latin America and the Caribbean, and His Excellency Gerardo Argote, Venezuela's ambassador to Belize.